Welcome to the Questionable Behavior Podcast. This is your host, Edison. We're out here in Atlanta, Georgia for Miss Universe, and we have a very special guest with us today, Mr. Aviad Arik Herman. Say hello.
Hello, everybody. Hi, Edison. Thanks for having me here.
No problem. Before we continue, don't forget to follow us on Instagram at _QBPC. Also, give us 5 stars on iTunes and everywhere we have stars. And we'll start the interview off. This is the designer for Great Britain and
Sweden.
And you did the gowns for Sweden, right?
For Sweden, correct.
And then you did the costume for Great Britain.
Correct.
Okay, so tell me, first of all, your experience with Miss Universe and, having to meet these deadlines with not one but 2 contestants.
Well, my experience goes back 8 years with Miss Universe. This will be my 8th Miss Universe pageant that
Okay.
I've been engaged with.
Mhm.
I currently am the official designer for Miss Universe Sweden and the design director. So for the past 8 consecutive years, it's been my commitment to conceptualize and facilitate Miss Sweden's
Right.
wardrobe as a national costume and evening gown. And throughout the years, I was commissioned by other countries as well, and got to collaborate with interesting projects, designing national
Right.
costumes or gowns.
So since your background, you're from Israel, how did you get together with Sweden? And is that something that, is kind of like a salt taste in your mouth because you're not working with your country, or
Well-
it doesn't, you're not thinking about it?
So, in fact, I have been living in Sweden for about 12 years,
Oh,
and
okay.
what made me move there from the first place was a career dance.
Oh, okay.
So I've been designing parallel to having a full-time career as a performing artist.
Oh, wow.
However, I did get to collaborate with Miss Israel for 2 consecutive years in 2016 and 2017 for both Miss Israel that participated at Miss Universe and Miss World. So I was very proud to have done it back home, especially having succeeded
Right.
abroad,
Right, and coming back
So it's
home
not
and showing your
as salty
talents.
taste, but I get what you're saying, yeah.
So, tell me about like the deadlines that you have to meet in regards to the gowns. I know a lot of girls previously have struggled, getting a gown a week before having to be here, and they want to practice walking in and all that. So, tell me how all that backroom pressure, how do you handle that, and how do you make sure to meet your deadlines?
So first of all, given that it is my responsibility at the Miss Universe Sweden organization, my work for the reigning queen starts a year before she's even crowned. So I actually get into planning thoroughly very well so that actually deadlines aren't ever an issue, at least as far as Miss Sweden goes.
Right.
However, of course, there have been situations when I was commissioned to collaborate with another organization, and it was, let's say, a last-minute thing. But I mean, I guess I'm someone who deals easily with pressure,
Okay.
and with my great team back home, that I am able to facilitate and produce this which we work on. So it just adds onto the excitement
Yeah.
and the challenge, if you may. Sometimes, having short periods to actually work and produce and deliver something, maybe isn't the optimal or ideal thing one may wish to have, but that's life, and sometimes that's what you've got. So that's another opportunity to be creative and find
Kind of,
solutions.
Find solutions at the last minute.
Yes.
I guess that kind of always helps progress people to another level when you have to kind of last minute decision make it happen.
Yes.
So now we have a magazine here with Great Britain. Tell me about this dress specifically because it does have a message along with it.
Yes.
We'll show you guys a better version of this one, but tell me about the message that this dress is portraying.
So indeed, I was grateful to have had the Atlanta Journal Constitution newspaper feature Miss Great
Great
Britain, as
Britain,
well as some more of my work. But this particular national costume for Great Britain, which I'm also very, very proud to have collaborated with the organization this year for the first time, is commenting on a very, very urgent and important subject. This is also very correlated to, I think, my identity as an artist and as a designer, not to just interpret let's say, pretty or obvious elements from, let's say, a country's culture or tradition, a flower or
Right, right,
national
right.
dish, but see what
You
is
try
it
to
that
take
we
it to a new
actually
level,
deal
kind of.
with in the days we live
Right.
in, the society, the world. And so Miss Great Britain's national costume is dealing with the phenomenon of global warming, which is a very severe political issue. And daily we see what's happening in different countries for catastrophic weather, and I mean, Venice underwater, and
Right.
pretty bad conditions that the world is dealing with right now. And so Great Britain is the first nation, the first large nation to initiate a government plan to tackle
Global
climate
warming,
change.
climate change,
And
right?
so the commitment is to reduce the emission of greenhouse gas to zero by the year 2050. And this slogan says zero carbon by 2050,
Yeah.
Great Britain. And this, of course, has been praised by other countries
Right.
worldwide. But because of Great Britain's pioneering
Yeah.
um,
The whole movement, yeah, being
yeah,
the first major country that
so
pushed that.
it seemed like the absolute perfect and most important thing, if anything, to work with, and also use the platform at Miss Universe
Yeah.
to bring
To
that
bring that whole
message that
message to the stage. Yep.
time is ticking. And I mean, we see in on this dress it features
Yeah.
iceberg melting, and
Here, you're gonna walk me through the dress. And so, all right, walk me through the dress, because at the, the top half of the dress is green, and the bottom is the water, which kind of shows, I guess, the icebergs melting.
correct. Well, so indeed we see this division in the dress. The blue bottom part of the dress really symbolizes the ocean and the
Right.
water rising. We see the icebergs, and we see the iconic Big Ben that is
Big Ben from right.
submerged in water in London.
And then she has a flattened earth that she's holding in her.
Exactly. Well, in her hand, this prop, we see like a deflated globe, and the Earth seems pretty sick and in a pretty severe condition there.
Yeah.
And also the crack on the bodies could be interpreted both as a crack, literally, or like lightning.
Yeah.
She also has the choker on her neck.
Okay.
And the yellow sign says "Storm ahead." These are like
Right.
the road signs.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And that's on her. That's on her neck, or the?
It's on her neck.
Okay.
So there's
Yeah.
a little yellow piece. I
And it
guess you
says
could
storm
see it
ahead.
better.
Yeah.
It says storm ahead, and it's embellished with rhinestones, but in a shape of exclamation marks, like the alarm signs.
Oh,
so
right.
that's the thought
Like
that
a
went
whole
into
warning.
that.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Exactly.
So tell me about the creative process of making a dress like this. How are you, coming up with these designs, and just your creative process in general?
In general, or particularly with this?
In general and particular.
Okay, so well, in general about national costumes, or in general?
Just in general, creative process. How do you sit down and come up with dresses?
Wow, okay, well, that's a very, very general question, and it really depends on what the project is.
Okay.
A lot of my design work has been stage costumes for dance, for theater, for
Okay.
musical theater. So
Oh, so you have like kind of a goal of how things are supposed to look.
exactly. I mean, if I work with directors or choreographers, and there probably is an artistic vision for
Yeah,
the
yeah.
piece.
So how about personally, like if you're coming up with something, because completely on your own, how
Right.
do you sit down and come up with that?
Okay, well, in this case, as it really is my fantasy, or the way that I, dream or envision, or like to challenge my own kind of design process. Sometimes it may be something I had dreamt of. Sometimes it may be, a mix. When I was younger, I would use my fashion drawings as an exercise to translate my emotions and thoughts and memories into drawing. So instead of writing a diary, I would go back home, and instead of writing "Dear Diary, today I met
Draw a
Edison
design.
and it was a fabulous interview," I would go, and
Thank you for that.
everything that I want to kind of archive from that was somehow interpreted into that design. And so these avant-garde things came up, and having had done that over years, I think had led me now to working with these creations of national costumes in the context of
Yeah.
Miss Universe, where then I use anything from national emblems into political
Yeah,
subject
yeah.
or whatever that is, a message or a story, and translate that into a garment and a dress. And so, for example,
Yeah.
Miss Great
For Great
Britain,
Britain, yep.
it started actually with with a conversation with the director of Miss Universe
Okay.
Great Britain and Miss Great Britain herself, who
Right.
was involved, and we were brainstorming about, and we were all pretty keen on, promoting and urging that message, because
So that was like the collective idea is to bring this message to the
yeah,
stage at Miss Universe. You just guys just didn't know how you're gonna do it.
exactly.
So did they leave the whole design process up to you
Yeah.
after the idea was put together?
Yeah, I also like having the whole design process for
Right.
myself as an artist.
Of
It's
course,
something
of
that
course.
I very much enjoy, and I also trust and trust my process and my guts. And I'm grateful for having had the freedom.
Yeah.
And so it took me, I don't know, a couple of days to kind of sleep on it and think, how is that going to be, interpreted into a dress or a national costume. It wasn't very clear from the very beginning that it's going to ultimately look like that.
Right.
There was an evolution of that
Right, right. A couple
costume.
of revisions, I'm sure.
But ultimately, that was the result, which also happened in a relatively shorter time. I think about a couple of months, the whole
From
process.
beginning to the end.
Yeah.
Wow.
So I finished working on the costume, which I produced in Israel, and then I traveled with the dress to the UK, and we actually did this incredible, dramatic photo shoot
Right, right.
on one of the stunning beaches in Cardiff, in Wales.
Yeah,
It was
and
a
it does
very
look kind of like a wasteland in a sense.
an-
It really brings out the message that you guys are trying to portray.
Yeah, it was a very wet, rainy, cold day, and these rocks added to the drama and the
The whole process, the whole photo
yeah,
shoot, etc.
exactly. So I'm very proud of having done that. I think it's very cohesive this way.
So in your career now that you've progressed this far to a point where they're trusting you completely with a national costume on the biggest stage in the world. Personally, how proud are you of yourself? Because I'm sure that throughout the years, people weren't trusting you fully with a whole creative vision. Now you're literally trusted in the biggest stage in the world. So how do you feel like yourself? Do you kind of have the time to enjoy this successful thing and be proud of it, or is it just one thing to the next?
First of all, thank you for this acknowledgement, and I am for sure very proud, and the sense of the achievement and completion is something that I have. First, I never take for granted, that those opportunities that I get to work with people, and I appreciate the freedom and the trust that people have in me and with my work. And coming here, for example, is a way of me celebrating my own personal and professional
Right.
accomplishment, and I'm year after year very proud to see the girls on stage being proud, confident, and celebrating themselves with my dresses.
creation, right,
I
right.
have to also mention that this year Miss Sweden's national costume is also something very significant and important for me.
Yep.
Being an Israeli Swedish designer, this year Miss Sweden is honoring ABBA, the pop band, which is
okay.
considered the most successful act in the
Right.
history of popular music. And this year, 2019, marks 45 years since ABBA won the Eurovision Song Contest and had their major breakthrough. And it's also a 20 years anniversary for Mamma Mia, the musical.
Oh, okay.
So it
that's
was
why she
a
did the
perfect
Mamma
timing
Mia,
for
right, right,
for
right.
Miss Sweden to celebrate ABBA through her national costume, and that dress that she wore at national costume also correlates to costumes which I just designed for the Israeli National Theater in Tel Aviv. If any of your viewers get to visit Tel Aviv,
Yeah.
you guys have to come and watch Mamma
Mamma
Mia
Mia
the
on
musical
stage.
on stage with costumes I've designed. And in fact, the finale costumes at the show and Miss Universe Sweden's national costume correspond.
Okay,
And that was
okay.
a way for me kind of,
To show off
twisting it
right, right,
or
right.
having this funny link between.
The two.
Yeah.
Okay, okay. So now, in regards to like the difference between preparing a gown and a national costume, what's the difference between the two when you're creating?
Well, when creating a gown for Miss Universe, what leads me is the thought of which I would like my girl not only to look, spectacular, elegant, all the things that you would expect
Right.
a miss to be appearing on that stage, but from a larger perspective, I would want my girl to stand out.
Yeah.
One has to consider that it's a stage production, and there is more than 90 girls. So when you look at it from a bigger perspective, all the girls together form a pretty,
Like
big chunk
right,
of
right.
sparkles.
Yeah.
And so what
They're all
I
coming with their best design. In a sense.
exactly, and somehow I try to find new ways to design gowns for the candidates which they would stand for their own, but in the perspective of them being in a group, they would still stand out.
So tell me something that you did in Miss Sweden's gown that you would say pops.
Well, I think that there is, of course, there's the fashionable trend nowadays in the field of evening gowns that everything is very amazingly, elaborately embellished and heavy and pretty minimal and transparent. And you do see that almost as a pattern that the majority of the girls tend to come with this kind of fashion, which is amazing and it works. It's all good. There is nothing like right or wrong about this. It's just that my approach is that if I see that so many girls wear that kind of gowns, I'd like my girl to be different and stand out. So this year, and we can see Miss Sweden's gown.
Yeah.
She has a very somewhat regal kind of gown when it's made of so the top part, the bodice, is made of a velvet,
Okay.
embellished with Swarovski rhinestones, and the skirt, which is made of tulle ruffles, with blue and white, with a big long tail. She looks elegant, she looks chic, she looks expensive. The combination of both the colors and the materials, they look very dramatic and theatrical in a very good way, And having watched her already at preliminaries, I was very happy to see that it actually proved to be working.
Yeah, that was my
As
next
she
question.
was
How do you
walking
think
in
they
the
did?
group, she was walking in with the group and the girls that were ahead of her and behind her, and she indeed
Stood out.
stood out. And I've been, getting to, I got to meet some fans here and talk and get some feedback. And a lot of people said that what a scandal with such a gown that is extraordinary and that she's noticeable.
It's a talking point.
Yeah, and
which is great to it's a great thing.
I personally and professionally think that she looked astonishing. I can't be more proud with Lina. She looks absolutely amazing, and I want to believe that she felt this way too. So I hope that answered your question.
Yeah. So in both the girls that make sure it's recording. Yeah. So both the girls that walked for you this year, how did you feel about their walk? You just explained Sweden about how Great Britain when she came out with her costume. Did you feel that the costume actually captured exactly what you guys were aiming for, and
Yeah.
the crowd reaction as well?
Yeah, well, first of all, regarding crowd reactions, that's a little bit hard to really
Well,
distinguish because,
there's so
with
many other
all
fans
the
of the other
fans
countries,
screaming
yeah.
around, it just adds on to the, the
Yeah.
party and the madness in the hall, which is amazing. And like when it comes down to the time they get to come on stage, it really comes down to, I don't know, less than 30 seconds.
Right, of showing it.
I am very proud also with Miss Great Britain. I think she had walked beautifully. She looked fabulously on the stage, and I'm very curious to see how this will be perceived now,
Right.
with the spectators and the fans, the
Yeah,
media.
the judges, everybody, right?
Yeah.
So, what kind of advice, before we close out our interview, what kind of advice would you give a young designer coming up? I'm sure you've been through a lot of hardships and a lot of times. I'm sure you faced times when you wanted to quit everything together. Most creative people do. So, what kind of advice would you give a young designer that's coming into the game?
Well, I think the best advice, if I was to be that young designer, when I was younger and newer, I came across people who would tell me that I'll never make it and I should think of doing something else.
Right.
So I guess fortunately I had my own, positive spirit to restore and generate my enthusiasm
Right,
and
and motivation,
motivation and encourage myself to continue and pursue that. So I guess if anything, that would be my best tip
So
to,
get
if
yourself
that's something that you
yeah.
want to do. I mean, I guess that applies on anything. If that's
Right.
something that really, is, you have the flame for it, and
Push through,
you
right.
push through, and
It's
you
just
do.
difficult sometimes when you hear all the negativity to get yourself in a positive state of mind where it's instead of like, oh, instead of getting yourself to like, oh, maybe they're right, you're like, you'll see. I'll show you. You know what I mean? So
Right.
that's, I guess, kind of the mental switch that you have to have
Well,
yourself.
yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe they are right. Maybe they are wrong, but it's worth
Trying
having
and going
tried.
for it.
I think that if anything, for me, it's like a thing I practice through my life in different levels. That I would prefer having tried and failed as opposed to regret not having tried.
Right,
So
So it all worked out. For
it
you at
all
the
works
end, yeah.
out.
So
It's not the end.
Yeah,
It's
not-
just
yeah,
the beginning,
just the beginning.
Edison.
Yeah, you got to maybe by 2050 when the whole world has zero carbon emissions, he's gonna be doing
Oh, yeah.
90 girls dresses.
Exactly.
All right, everybody,
Sweet.
make sure to check out his page and his design. Do you have a website where people can actually shop?
Yeah, they can. As of now, I still do custom
Oh, okay.
made.
All right. So
but
you,
maybe
you
that
know,
will
you
be
have to
the
hire
next
him
thing.
privately, ladies and
Privately.
gentlemen. Yeah.
But you're welcome to follow me on my social media on Instagram
Tell
and
everybody
Facebook.
where to
It's
follow you. Give
Aviad
all your
Arik
plug.
Herman. Maybe you could
Yeah.
type
I'm
it in.
gonna type it in so
Yeah.
you guys can spell that out.
And also my beautiful website. You're welcome to visit. Maybe
what's
down
your
the
website?
line. It's www.aviadarikherman.com.
Okay. So.
And
And
yeah.
that's it, ladies and gentlemen. Make sure to tune in to Miss Universe. Check us out. 5 stars on all platforms and subscribe to our YouTube channel. All right. Take care,
Thank you very
everybody.
much.
And we'll see if either Great Britain or Sweden are in the top 15 tonight.
Thank you,
All right.
Edison.
Thank you.
Thank you so
It
much.
was a pleasure.